In other venues, I have spoken about the law of nations. There are various components of this body of thought, and these components are the person, the family, the people, or the nation, or maybe ethnicity is another word you can use, and then also, too, the state and then the international community. All of these components have a relationship with each other, and all are oriented towards an international common good, if you will. That is to make sure that there is peace in the world so that the person can develop, the family can be protected, and so on and so forth. In that regard, there are certain rights and duties that the principal players in the international community have. Now, this line of thinking largely fell into disuse after really the 1960s for a variety of reasons, which I will explain elsewhere. But what I am talking to you about is from a book on the Code of International Ethics that was edited by John Epstein. And this book laid out in pretty easy to understand terms concepts that are practical and useful that are derived from the natural law and also from the divine positive law. So, what I'd like to do today is to talk to you about the rights of states. And I guess we're resurrecting here this idea of the law of nations. So, this is kind of exciting. Um, so, let's talk about the rights of states, who are the principal actors. Um, they have six major rights. The first one is to existence, to self preservation and defense, to independence, to sovereignty, meaning internal, to equality, meaning external, and then the right to promote the national interest. Um, I'm going to go through this in a very cursory form. So, the first right that states have is the right to existence. So, in every state, there's territory, population, government, and they are supposed to maintain the peace within the borders and to satisfy international obligations. The formation of states comes about from a variety of different means, um, history, agreement, whatever it may be. There is a right to national self determination, but not every separatist movement is entitled to claim that. As I have also written elsewhere, the United States and our war of independence, the American Revolution, was indeed a war of national self determination, as well as a war of independence. Okay, the second right of states is self preservation and defense. Um, quote, the right, that is, quote, the right to take all the measures of self preservation and defense that are necessary, end of quote. So, absent an international authority, that means each state is supposed to maintain and have internal police to keep the peace, armaments to defend itself from unjust aggressors. It has the right to make alliances, again, to protect itself. And also, too, it has the right to intervene in the affairs of other states who are themselves threatening that state or perhaps threatening the international order. Um, so, when we're talking about alliances, that's a very important concept in sovereignty. We see in Ukraine that there's a discussion of terms of peace, and a number of sources say what Putin wants is Ukraine not to join any alliances. That's why the United States government says that at issue here is the sovereignty of Ukraine. If you take away the right of a country to form alliances to protect itself, then you really impinge its sovereignty. Okay, the next right is independence. That's called external sovereignty. And each state is responsible for the common good of its own society. Okay, that's pretty makes sense. Now, some states, in order to accomplish that mission, may require foreign help. That foreign help can consist of something called intervention. Intervention can consist of things like diplomatic initiatives, military demonstrations, blockades, economic help. Um, it can be open assistance, disguised assistance, and it can also be military intervention. The Catholic Church, with Pope Pius IX and the Syllabus of Errors, item number 62, which came out in December of 1864, is very clear. And the Catholic Church rejects this idea of non intervention. States may intervene in the affairs of other states as necessary. Now, there are certain conditions for that, and we'll discuss that at another moment. The next right is the right of sovereignty. It's also known as internal sovereignty. That's basically the right to control and keep inviolate and use the land, the sea, the air. Okay, it is the right to rule over people or subjects that are subject to their government, to their state, and it's the right to control immigration, people coming in, and emigration, people going out. Um, it is not acceptable to just simply let vast numbers of people move between different countries. It has to be properly controlled, and immigration is subject to restrictions for the benefit of all the countries actually involved, the receiving country and the country from whom the people come. There's also a duty of states to assist in the assimilation of new people as they come into their country. The fifth right is equality, which means that each country has the same fundamental rights to do what it must to fulfill its mission. The next item is the promotion of the national interest, and I'm going to do some reading on this one because it's a little bit involved. What do we mean by the promotion of the national interest? Well, ultimately, that means that states have been entrusted with the mission, quote, of promoting to the utmost the prosperity of the society committed to their care, end of quote. And so they can rightly claim the right to work without hindrance for the accomplishment of that task, end of quote. Now, there are limitations of that general principle, and one of the limitations is that while it has the right to use its own riches and resources for its people, it does not have the right to administer this, what they call national patrimony, what we call national patrimony, solely for its own convenience, quote, without any regard to the higher interests of humanity, leaving its natural resources undeveloped or refusing to make them available to other peoples who have an urgent need of them, end of quote. So while we have resources, we've got to make them available to other peoples around the world. That's an obligation. That's a duty to the people. So you have rights that are limited somewhat by duties. Then we have the idea, additional ideas of how to make sure that the national interest is promoted. So in this regard, the national interest is, of course, subservient to the greater good of humanity. You have to take care of your own people first, but then you also have to help humanity too. And so that is done through an active system of exchanges, the work of different states to defend against overzealous foreign competition, and also to allow for the free circulation of goods while reducing barriers to a minimum and allowing for the disposal of excess products. Along this whole same line, there is this idea of treaties of commerce, which allow for international markets and their exploitation and a just equilibrium of commercial exchanges and a fair division of markets. There's also a spiritual framework, and that is that all of the countries, all the states, must in fact practice justice and charity towards one another, because there is a fundamental unity of the human family. So that means that they have to protect and respect the legitimate interests of other countries. And that means that they are to work in furtherance of and in service to something called the international common good, which is to keep the peace. And the best way to keep the peace is with right order. Um, that's where we're going to stop for now. I'm going to do a program on duties, which is a little bit more involved. And thank you.